We've seen the devastation and destruction ISIS has caused in Iraq, in Syria, throughout the region. Beheadings, brutal killings, crucifixions, rapes. Now, take a look at this video. One group of women, the Yazidis, facing specific threat, and they're trying to get help.
Among the many things Daesh took from these children was their childhood. It's particularly tough for girls. Several thousand women and girls were believed to have been captured by Daesh as the spoils of war. The biggest target were Yazidi. They kidnapped the women, raping them, torturing them, and forcing them into sexual slavery. Their intent was to destroy entire communities. A few hundred of the women have made their way back. With the Syrian refugees already here, there are now almost 2 million refugees and displaced Iraqis in this region. In some communities, displaced people outnumber residents. This is just one of the camps for displaced Iraqis. More than 12,000 people live here. When you live in a tent, there's almost nowhere you can go for privacy. Wadha has been trying to put her life back together after being held by Daesh for 3 months. It haunts her.
ناوی هر شش حوالی من نویسی جدا ناوی من نویسی گوش مرا گوزیش خرابم گوبست گوزیوانی دیتری گوزیوان فروشم.
She says she was eventually taken to Mosul and held with other women in a wedding hall. There, some of them were beaten and stripped. Her friend Jaylan slit her wrists. She finally found a chance to escape and persuaded other women to go with her.
نزانیم چلو داری که وین دیواری وان گلکی بلند بو. أيمن بردوير دمان مهوالا خو بلند كلنجي أوجي دوجي هاتن أوجي ندقهشتنا ديوار ملنجوان جي بلند كر حرز ما حس يا هات تلقى بلنجي ما تكاتن بس يكن معنا كات بس دستن ماشكاستن ودستي هوالا مدرس لنجي كيجيشا سريع كيجيشكاست هرموتيشان.
Faiza was 17 years old when Daesh stormed their village. She can still hear the gunmen saying, "Take the women and kill the men." And she replays in her mind Daesh holding a gun to her husband's head. For a rare moment, in the company of other women, she remembers happier times. Her wedding in Sinjar, just a year before Daesh came. Posing for wedding photos with her husband. Faiza and her sister-in-law managed to escape. But like so many women here, she can't escape the memories. Here, Faiza's life is reduced to this tent, but she's a poet. And her voice continues. Her mother-in-law says Faiza gets angry all the time and throws things. Siwi Abdikhader has just buried her year-and-a-half-old daughter, Jian. She'd had diarrhea for 20 days, and there was no clinic nearby to treat her. She died before they could get her to the hospital. Her son, Maher, who's blind, says his youngest sister has gone home. Her family tells her not to cry, or she'll make Maher cry. Maher can't walk or see, but he can sing. He sings of Sinjar. Along with hundreds of other families, they live in a construction site near Zakho, near the same mountains Kurds used to escape a genocidal campaign 2 decades ago. Life is hard here. No one is sure what comes next. But there's a resiliency that can't be extinguished, and a hunger to find something better. They just can't do it alone.
The issue of ISIS and its attacks against women, families, and people of all types in the region. Now we're talking about this. with Sherri Talabany. She's the wife of the Deputy Prime Minister of the Kurdistan Regional Government and president of the Seed Foundation. Sherri, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Watching that video and those stories, it's so emotional for people who perhaps are disconnected from all of that. And it hits home for you.
This took place 45 minutes from the city of Erbil, the capital of Iraqi Kurdistan. And it's hard to believe that this kind of horrific brutality exists today.
Those stories of those women are so compelling, and yet there are many of them, right? I mean, some of them would just shock Americans.
Unfortunately, the story that you heard of the women being captured, subjected to horrendous brutality and violence, their husband being killed, sometimes beheaded in front of them, sometimes their children being killed in front of them. The women were abducted. They were sold all over Iraq, some many times, and they're there to service the soldiers. This was a tactic of ISIS to recruit volunteers, and it certainly was an attempt to break down a society.
The depravity of ISIS and the extent to which they're affecting that entire region, I don't think people fully grasp here.
Well, unfortunately, the lack of ethnic and religious tolerance that we see all over the Middle East allows a system of such violence against the other. We don't have such sectarian violence in Kurdistan. There's a degree of tolerance, both religious and ethnic tolerance, and openness in the society that makes Kurdistan a really different, unique, and special place. We've seen between 4,000 and 5,000 women abducted and taken as sex slaves and abused all over Iraq. And even sometimes the ordinary citizen in Iraq has purchased somebody as a slave. It's modern-day slavery, Bret.
So you set up this foundation, the Seed Foundation. It's a 501c3, seeking donations here in America to help with that effort.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
So we have a Seed Foundation operating in Kurdistan and Seed for Change in the U.S. It's a 501c3, and what we're doing is providing that aftercare, that psychosocial support. So counseling to people suffering from trauma to help them cope, social work to help them deal with their everyday problems in the camp, and other classes and training and recreational activities to improve their resiliency so that we can have a healthy and healed community in Kurdistan so they can contribute to our society. And I think it's important for Kurdistan's development. It's important for a generation of children that have now been outside of schools, in some cases for a year or more. And so our organization has a very comprehensive, holistic approach. We're working with these survivors of sexual violence, but we're also working with their whole families and men who are also suffering from trauma, to prevent them from becoming perpetrators and also to help them deal with the trauma of their wives being abused and raped and abducted.
I mean, the stories are horrific and they are great in number. But, you know, the domestic politics here, as you're in a presidential cycle, is all about, you know, we have problems here at home. Why should we be putting ourselves out in these other places? What do you say to somebody who may be thinking that way?
Well, I think we're seeing the result of this mass exodus from Syria. It's a civil war that's gone on for almost 5 years, and we're hosting over 500,000 refugees from Syria and Kurdistan. Now we're seeing we have about 1.5 million displaced from Iraq. The U.S. has to engage in these countries to prevent these conflicts from overflowing outside the region and across the borders. And we've got this flow of migrants across Europe and now asylum seekers all over the world. So the U.S. has to continue to engage in these areas of strategic importance. The ideology of ISIS, you can see it spreading in the Middle East, and it's a very grave danger to the United States.
So give us the details. If somebody wants to donate, somebody wants to get involved, what do they do?
Sure. Well, we have our website, which is www.seed, Kurdistan.org, and they can make a donation of any amount and learn more about the work that we're doing and stay engaged. every dollar matters. Every effort can go directly to the women and the families that we're supporting. We have low overhead, no big administrative structures. We're working on the ground, a partnership between international people like me and locals who know exactly what the needs are of this population.
And the stories, they unfortunately continue, but you're hoping that eventually you can help these communities recover.
Well, new women are coming back, being rescued and escaping every day from the hands of ISIS. Some are coming with their children, some are coming alone, and we want to be there and expand our services so no woman that comes back from this horrific criminal acts has to face this situation alone.
Well, Sherri, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.